Hello everyone, my name is Ghoulwave and today I will be going over some criminals that were fueled by some absolutely insane delusions alongside my buddy K-Wave. This ranges from a man attempting to assassinate a former president to impress an actress that didn't even know him, to a man who killed his family for a video game character. If that sounds interesting to you, I suggest that you stick around. Now let's get straight into it.
John Hicnkley Jr., who I will refer to as simply John, was born on May 29th, 1955 in Ardmore, Oklahoma. However, he would go on to move with his wealthy family to Houston, Texas at the age of 4. His father was the founder, chairman, chief executive, and president of the Vanderbilt Energy Corporation. John would go through his normal school life and became an on-and-off student at Texas Tech University in 1974. And in 1975, John would go to Los Angeles with dreams of becoming a songwriter. However, his dreams were unsuccessful and he would write to his parents hoping for money. He would write about his girlfriend named Lynn Collins, who would turn out to be a fabrication who was created by John. And in September of 1976, he would return home to his parents' house in Evergreen, Colorado. In the late 1970s, John would begin to purchase weapons and practice with them. He would also be prescribed antidepressants and tranquilizers to deal with his emotion problems. John would begin his strange turn though, as he would become obsessed with the 1976 movie Taxi Driver. If you've never seen the film, the protagonist of the movie plans to assassinate a presidential candidate. One of the characters John would become absolutely infatuated with was a trafficked 12-year-old child who would be played by Jodie Foster. John would also begin to dress and act like the main character of the movie. When Jodie Foster went to Yale, John would briefly move to New Haven, Connecticut to simply stalk her. His parents gave him money to enroll into a writing course at the college, but he would never attend and instead would be using the money to support himself as he left love letters and poems to Jodie. He would even call her repeatedly to leave messages. After these attempts inevitably failed, John would begin thinking about perpetrating an aircraft hijacking or killing himself in front of her to gain her attention. Eventually, he would come to the conclusion that he should assassinate the president to appeal to her as an equal in history. John would follow the then president Jimmy Carter from state to state during his 1980 campaign. On October 9th, 1980, John would be at the Nashville International Airport while trying to get on a flight to New York. He would then be arrested because he had 3 unloaded guns in his hand luggage. The guns were confiscated and he was fined $50 and he would be released on the same day. After traveling to Dallas, Hicnkley purchased more guns, including the revolver that he would later use in the attempted assassination on President Reagan. After exhausting the money from his parents, he returned home. He was broke and he would go under psychiatric treatment for his depression, and it would yield little to no improvement. In 1981, he fixated on a new target. With President Reagan newly elected, he would go on to study the assassination of John F. Kennedy to aid him. John would arrive in Washington, D.C. on March 29, 1981. The next morning, John would discover that Reagan was going to be at the Hilton Hotel for a conference. John would spend the morning writing a letter to Jodie Foster. At 2:27 p.m. EST, John attempted to assassinate President Reagan outside the Hilton Hotel. He would fire 6 shots. Press Secretary James Brady was critically wounded. A police officer and a Secret Service agent were also wounded, and a bullet struck the presidential limousine's armored glass. Reagan was seriously wounded after a ricocheted bullet hit his chest. A man named Alfred Antiochi saw John firing his gun, and he would go on to hit him in the head, dragging him to the ground. An agent named Dennis McCarthy would drive his car onto John to avoid what happened with Lee Harvey Oswald, who killed JFK but then was shortly killed after. John would go to court over the attempted assassination. However, his lawyer would bring up the likelihood of schizophrenia playing a role in this, and that John thought that part of himself truly to be the fictional protagonist of Taxi Driver. John would be found not guilty due to insanity. He would then be sent to St. Elizabeth's Hospital for treatment of his schizophrenia. Soon after the trial, John would write that the shooting was the greatest love offering in the history of the world. Over the years, his supervision would be slowly lifted until July 27, 2016, when a federal judge ruled that he could be released from the hospital. John would go on to be released on September 10th, 2016, with many conditions, including that he was required to live full-time at his mother's home in Williamsburg, Virginia, to work at least 3 days a week, and to record his browser history. On September 27th, 2021, a judge would then go on to fully release him with no conditions. If you're wondering where John is now, well, he's trying to create art and music. He even has a YouTube channel currently that you can check out right now.
Nicholas Prosper. Nicholas Prosper was an 18-year-old that was said to be very introverted during his life. He was sort of the black sheep in his family, a family that consisted of very happy, nice, and bright minds, unlike Nicholas. His mom, 48-year-old Juliana Prosper, was described as athletic and a very good mother, as well as a truly caring individual. It was said by one of her friends that, in her spare time, Julie was a keen athlete and enjoyed raising money for charity, always putting others first. Nicholas's brother, 16-year-old Kyle Prosper, was described as funny, kind, and also an athlete who played football and participated in boxing. The only daughter in the family, 13-year-old Giselle Prosper, was described as very lovable and smart, excelling in all her classes. They all seemed to be a really happy and strong family, but as I said earlier, Nicholas was the black sheep. We get a glimpse at the type of person Nicholas was based off of his online history. Apparently, Nick would browse the subreddit r/watchpeopledie quite often. If you don't know, r/watchpeopledie was a subreddit where you would, well, watch people die. r/watchpeopledie was banned on Reddit, however, but the community didn't want it to go, so they made a website that essentially worked exactly like the r/watchpeopledie subreddit. Nicholas moved to the site, and based off of his comments, we can see he had a particular hatred for women and feminism as a whole, often justifying acts of violence against women by saying things like they were probably feminists. He would also make tasteless jokes on videos of women dying, seeming to find videos of women actually dying funny. Another thing to point out is he had a particular interest in videos of young boys dying that seemed to be sexual. He would make comments sexualizing young boys who died, saying things like, "Why did no one start jiggling his butt after?" And on a video of a young boy jumping from a building, he commented, 90% of the impact sound was his cheeks clapping. If you're not already sure that Nicholas has an interest in children, wait till you hear what got Nick banned from a literal shock website. Every time Nicholas would see a post or comment that condemns pedophilia, he would feel the need to argue that adults having relations with kids is actually completely harmless. When Nicholas eventually got banned for sexualizing children, he debated heavily with the site's moderators, claiming that he never actually sexualized any children. Even if that was true, which it's not, I doubt even the gore websites want people debating why pedophilia is good on their platform. After the moderators got sick of debating Nick, they just told him that if he submits a video of his suicide to the site, they'll unban him, and for obvious reasons, Nick was just going to have to live with being banned. After this ban from the Watch People Die site, he moved on to Instagram, where he would post his drawings. Most notably, however, Nick seemed to be mainly following children on his new Instagram, which is very concerning, but we don't know if he actually got into contact with any of the kids he followed, and I can only hope he didn't. Other than social media and online forums, one of Nick's main interests was the Walking Dead video game. Nicholas was particularly fascinated with the character Clementine, specifically the version of her before she grew up. Nicholas liked the character so much that he wanted to be her, stating that, if not for an inter-universal and a clem-close The Walking Dead body, I'd wish I was a darling femboy. What a sentence, huh? Eventually, Nick had his little sister play The Walking Dead. One thing to note about this game is it's a choice-based game, where whatever choices you make affect the main storyline. His sister made choices in the game that traumatized the character Clementine, like killing people in front of her. Nick loved this fictional character so much that he seemed to resent his sister after she made the choices that traumatized Clementine. While Nick started bottling up his hatred towards his sister, he also made a YouTube channel where he would continue to defend his stance on pedophilia and many other dark topics. One thing you may notice about the thumbnails to these videos is they are all drawings of the character Clementine. In one of Nick's videos where he was arguing that viewing CP isn't an issue, he says he has seen arguably the darkest piece of gore media. I'm not going to go into detail about what Daisy's Destructions contains, but it's a mix of gore and CP. In that same video, he mentions being in an imaginary relationship with the character Clementine, and in one final video called Kingdom Level Above Human, Nick talks about how he just can't forgive his sister for the choices she made in the Walking Dead video game. as well as a distaste for his family as a whole. This distaste manifested in him somehow getting a shotgun even though he didn't have any proper license for it. In the video prior, Nick states that he's going to mutilate his sister's face for the choices she made in The Walking Dead.
On June 30th, my sister decided to make the only correct choices in episode 1 of season 1 of The Walking Dead games, and for that her face will be mutilated further than necessary.
Later in that video, Nick starts talking about Clementine in a seemingly religious way, believing that he is her chosen one.
I am the chosen one, chosen by Clementine. I am guided, as Christians are guided by Jesus Christ.
And also starts stating that Clementine's happiness must be preserved. After making that video, on September 13th, 2024 at around 5:30 in the morning, Nick grabbed his shotgun and killed his mother Juliana, sister Giselle, and brother Kyle. Nicholas then took off running on foot but was caught by police not too long after. He is going to have a plea hearing on January 28th of this year, or at least that's what I last heard, as this plea hearing has been delayed about twice now.
Anissa Weier and Morgan Geyser. On May 31st of 2014, 12-year-old Anissa Weier and Morgan Geyser took their friend Peyton Leutner into the woods after a sleepover they had and stabbed her 19 times. Fortunately, Peyton survived the attack, but one thing Peyton asked herself after the attack is why? Why would her friends do that? Well, the answer is rather confusing. See, Morgan Geyser, one of the perpetrators in the attempted murder, was described as quite odd by her classmates and teachers, to the point where some people thought she acted weird on purpose for attention. One example of Morgan's odd behavior was chasing other students during school and barking at them. While strange, that doesn't exactly raise any red flags about someone, especially considering she was a kid. However, one thing Morgan did was run away from classmates and say the character from Harry Potter, Snape, was chasing her. Now, that seems quite innocent, but in retrospect, we can theorize that her doing that was a result of early onset schizophrenia, which was something Morgan was only diagnosed with after the stabbing. Another incident before the stabbing, though, that is really hard to just brush past is when one of Morgan's classmates found her playing with her own blood, which scared them enough to tell the teacher. Morgan's behavior at the school continuously got more concerning, and at one point Morgan got suspended for bringing a mallet to school. Her reasoning for this being protection. With nothing to do at school, you might wonder what she does at home, and well, it was reported by Morgan's mom that Morgan would browse scary stories online. One site Morgan liked a lot was the Creepypasta Wiki. For those of you who don't know, creepypastas are basically just scary stories that get told online. They get the name creepypasta from the word copypasta, and a copypasta is a text usually containing something funny or just weird that gets copied and pasted all around the internet. Creepypastas do the same thing, but instead of whoever's in the text is meant to be scary. Some popular pieces of internet culture that came from this was Jeff the Killer, Smile Dog, and Slender Man. Now, Slender Man becomes a character very important in this story, as the character played a strong role in the motivation of the attempted murder. Morgan had a journal where she would make drawings similar to the ones made by Slender Man in his stories that get told online, and it looks like sometimes she would even draw the character Slender Man himself. It was during this time in Morgan's life that she met Anissa Weier, one of the perpetrators in the stabbing. Anissa was described as quiet and the teacher's pet with a bit of a temper. Anissa became friends with Morgan, but Morgan also had one other friend as mentioned in the beginning of this story, and that friend was Peyton. Peyton seemed to be really the only person Morgan bonded with more than Anissa, but Anissa and Peyton didn't seem to get along very well. Morgan and Anissa, on the other hand, did get along very well, and they bonded over lots of things, but the main big thing that they bonded over was Slender Man. One day, when talking about Slender Man, they brought up something called proxies, which are people in the Slender Man universe, typically young teenagers that get possessed by Slender Man and are forced to do his bidding. Morgan suggested they should become proxies, and when Anissa asked how they would do such a thing, Morgan suggested they should kill their friend Peyton. Her reasoning is that killing their friend would prove themselves as worthy to Slender Man. To most people this would seem absolutely insane, but to two mentally ill preteens this made perfect sense. So on May 31st, 2014, Morgan and Anissa attempted their plan and went into the woods with Peyton after a sleepover, which is where Morgan and Anissa stabbed their friend Peyton 19 times, leaving her in the woods to die, and going on the run. Morgan and Anissa were found by the police 5 hours later in a Steinhoffel's furniture store. A passerby on a bike reported the crime as he saw Peyton's body and called 911. Thankfully, Peyton made it out alive. The two Gores were found not guilty by reason of insanity, as both were diagnosed with the same form of schizophrenia after the stabbing.
Hey guys, I should add that Anissa Weier actually wasn't diagnosed with any form of schizophrenia. She was diagnosed with a mental disease or mental defect. Morgan Geyser was the only one diagnosed with early onset schizophrenia.
Morgan Geyser got sentenced to a maximum of 40 years to life at Winnebago Mental Health Institution, and Anissa Weier got sentenced to a maximum of 25 years to life, also in a mental institution. Anissa Weier was released in September of 2021, and during January 9th of this year, a judge ordered Morgan to be also released. I hope Peyton is doing fine in life now and has found the strength to move on from that incident, but I mean, that is a traumatizing event, and I imagine it will stick with her for life.
Randy Stair. Randy Stair is a man born September 17th of 1992 to parents Robert and Lorraine Stair, alongside his brother Jeremy Stair. Randy described himself as shy and introverted in his early life, and he said he felt very lonely during this period. To cope with this loneliness, Randy would watch a lot of cartoons and would develop some drawing skills due to the fact he would draw the characters in the cartoons he watched. Randy also had a fascination with making home videos. Some would include his brother Jeremy.
Okay, that'd be $11.95. What? Give me $11.95, please. Again? No, you also bought that football, $11.95. Oh, again, and a football should be like $2. Thank you.
Randy went on being a really shy kid throughout elementary and middle school, not really making many friends, and sticking to cartoons as well as drawing. In Randy's high school life, he did make a few friends, but the loneliness never really left. And to make things worse, one of Randy's brother's friends would die in a car crash on the way to school. Even though Randy didn't really know this friend of Jeremy's very well, this event still impacted his life greatly. This death of his brother's friend really fueled his interest in the subject, and he later talked about how this caused him to think about death a lot more than before, to the point where it was almost all he thought about whether he was in class or at home. While still in high school, Randy found interest in the world of YouTube and made lots of YouTube channels, but many got taken down because of copyright. One channel that stuck though was Pioneers Productions. Randy would post vlogs, let's plays, and fan animations of the show Danny Phantom. Danny Phantom becomes very relevant in the story due to the obsession Randy had with the character Ember McLean from said show. This will be touched upon more later, however. Eventually, Randy would graduate high school even though he described struggling with grades and having a strong desire to drop out. Randy got a job at McDonald's but quit after 3 hours. After this, Randy's dad got him a part-time job at the Weier supermarket. Randy worked at the supermarket for a while before quitting his job to work at a hospital full-time. He didn't stay at the hospital long though due to feeling pressured, and he would later return to the supermarket. In 2011, Randy went to Luzerne County Community College where he majored in mass communications until 2014. While at community college, Randy started to gain a small following on YouTube and even got mentioned in a Ray William Johnson video, who was huge at the time.
Alright, a couple of interesting things about this. One, the kid who originally posted this actually vlogs regularly on YouTube.
On Randy's YouTube channel, his obsession with Ember McLean and Danny Phantom started to become apparent as they were getting referenced in almost all of his videos. Randy created something called the Ghost Squad with original characters designed by him that were inspired by Danny Phantom. In videos later recorded by Randy, he stated that he started getting insane ideas about his Ghost Squad animations, believing that in the afterlife he would exist as a ghost girl with Ember McLean and all of his custom characters.
Just trying to pinpoint where it exactly started. Well, obviously when I first saw her, but back when I'm like 14, I'm not thinking, oh, there's this whole world full of these ghosts, and I'm one of them.
He believed he wasn't meant to be on Earth and needed to die to return to all of his creations. Randy was also developing a concerning interest in the Columbine school shooting, frequenting online forums that discussed the topic. Randy went on for a while developing dangerous ideas and living a life that he hated, until eventually Randy started leaving cryptic clues to his family and audience about a dark plan he had brewing. These clues consisted of wearing a Natural Selection t-shirt, the same one worn by Eric Harris, who was one of the Columbine school shooters, and making tweets stating he had something planned on June 7th. He also made really dark animations with his Ghost Squad characters, even making one where one of his characters does a mass shooting. Somehow, all of this went unnoticed, and Randy managed to get his mom to buy him 2 shotguns. If it's not clear, Randy was planning a shooting. Randy had some private videos he planned on uploading right before his shooting, and in one of these videos, Randy claims his motivation for wanting to do the shooting is because Ember McLean from Danny Phantom wants him to do it so they can get more people for the Ghost Squad.
It's like I was sent here to do this. I was physically sent here to spread this cause. To start this cult, and whatever happens, happens.
Randy's ideas about the afterlife were really confusing and can only leave someone wondering how he came to the conclusions that he did. I'd say it was a mix of mental illness and isolation, but I'm not a psychiatrist. On one fateful day, Randy decided to flip a coin. The coin dictated whether Randy would take his life and only his own, or shoot up the supermarket he worked at and take his life there. Heads decided if it would be just him, and Tails decided if he would do the shooting. He did it best out of 3, and unfortunately Tails won. A few days later, on June 8th, Randy barricaded the exits of the supermarket he worked at, fatally shooting 3 of his co-workers and then himself. The story of Randy is tragic. So much isolation gave a man absolutely insane delusions, which led to the death of 4 people, including Randy himself. The story of Randy shows that you should check on those around you and don't ignore any red flags you see in someone's mental state. To me, it kind of seemed like Randy wanted someone to catch on to what he was planning and get him the help he needed, considering he left so many clues. And things probably could have gone a lot differently if Randy got the help he needed. But it's needless to say that's not the way to ask for help, and what Randy did was absolutely disgusting. May the families of Randy's victims stay strong and find peace. Well, that was it. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. Also, if you have any topics you want covered, please let us know. It's very likely we'll consider whatever ideas you put in the comments because we need as much help as possible. Anyways, thanks for watching and stay safe.